I think basically as senators on and off the committee and the public begins to know more about all this, their comfort level is starting to come up a bit, and I believe that strongly, and I do believe that in the end we'll have some significant bipartisan support.
A hopeful-sounding Max Baucus, chairman of the Finance Committee, kind of sounding like nobody else in Congress right now.
The soundbite may have sounded like it was 6 months old or so, but we promise you it was just from yesterday. Top Line starts right now.
Hello and welcome to ABCNews.com's Top Line. I'm David Chalian.
And I'm Rick Klein.
Each weekday, we're here bringing you the very latest political headlines, reporting, insight, analysis, everything you need and want to know about politics.
And it's twitter.com/The Note if you want to keep that conversation going all day long, ask questions for our guests or our hosts.
Who wouldn't want to keep that conversation going all day long?
I agree with you.
Yeah. Kick us off, sir. What's your top line?
Apology not accepted. Congressman Joe Wilson's outburst on the House floor last week is going to come to a floor vote today, an official rebuke coming from the House of Representatives. We expect it to fall exactly on party lines. I can't imagine many crossover votes here, but a lot of Democrats feel strongly about the need to do this. And even though Congressman Wilson has apologized through Rahm Emanuel, the White House Chief of Staff, to go further than that. And there's a racial component here as well, if you look at some of the folks who've been outspoken.
Well, there's no doubt about that. I mean, Nancy Pelosi came out last Thursday and said, we want to talk about health care, move on. The president on 60 Minutes Sunday night said, we want to move on. And clearly, Jim Clyburn, others in the House have been very, very vocal about the need to have this kind of rebuke on the House floor. We'll get into that. It's the economy, stupid. Yes, if you get past all that health care talk we've been debating and look at these core economic numbers in our latest ABC News Washington Post poll, you see why the president's having such a tough time. Rick, I think the number was 47% of Americans have been touched by the economic crisis either in a salary cut or a lost job. That's half the country that has a personal experience with the recession. That's how widespread this is going on.
Astounding, and it tells you something about even though the fact that we have Ben Bernanke today saying that the recession may be over, people aren't feeling that. As long as you have loved ones and direct relatives who've had this kind of experience with it, that's a lot more important. Veep's voyage, a surprise visit to Iraq by Vice President Joe Biden. This kicks off the day today, and this is the third trip we've seen the Vice President make to Iraq. It's been an area of particular concern for him, and focus the attention a little bit more on that war versus Afghanistan, which has been in the news quite a bit lately. Some important meetings from the Vice President today, and this, of course, is always going to be front and center when it comes to the Obama administration.
It's his third trip this year, and you may recall in July, a lot of his meetings were canceled because of sandstorms, and he couldn't get around. So they clearly on the part of the administration, they feel that it's important to have a high-ranking official looking eye to eye with some of these folks in Iraq to make sure that they finish their assignment so that we can continue to get out of there. And finally, the full Ginsburg. Yes, that's what it's called in honor of Monica Lewinsky's lawyer, William Ginsburg, back in the late 90s. He went on all 5 network Sunday morning shows. This one has a little bit of a twist. Barack Obama, the President of the United States, going to go out there this weekend. He will also hit 5 Sunday shows, but Fox News is getting snubbed on this one, and instead he's going to do Univision.
Yeah, so a friend, and if you'll pardon my Spanish, I'll call it the El Ginsburg Completo, in honor of Univision taking the place of Fox.
We'll get into just how smart or not that strategy is a little bit later. But we're going to begin with the healthcare debate and the Joe Wilson apology controversy. We are joined by Congresswoman Barbara Lee. She's the chairwoman of the Congressional Black Caucus. She joins us up on Capitol Hill. Democrat from California. Barbara Lee, thank you very much for being here. We appreciate it.
Good to be with you.
Let's just begin with this Joe Wilson resolution, since it's been introduced today on the House floor, or will be. I want to get a sense from you. Is this a distraction? Republicans are calling this a bit of a sideshow, and that the Democrats are doing this simply because they don't want to be talking about health care. Is this an unnecessary distraction since he's already apologized to the White House?
The Democrats have been talking about health care for many, many years, and it's about time that we have comprehensive health care with a robust public option. These are the debates, the policy debates that are taking place right now, not only here in the Congress, but also throughout the country. Congressman Wilson rightfully apologized to the president. However, this breach in decorum occurred on the House floor, and I believe our leadership is correct in making sure that the apology takes place in the forum where the breach occurred.
And what's the message that you hope that sends to the people who are watching home at C-SPAN and watching what Congress is doing, to have that formal step?
The formal step is very important because people in our country need to see members of Congress act in a civil manner. And I think what we saw during August, unfortunately, was a lack of civility. We have to set the standard. We have to be the ones to say, this is the way we conduct our business. Of course, we have the right to free speech, we have the right to debate policy issues, and we should in a very vigorous and passionate way. But there are lines that we must not cross. And so I think the message will be a very good message, not only to this body, but to the entire country, that we all have to listen to each other and that we all have to act in the spirit of civility and talk to each other rather than engage in personal attacks.
Congresswoman, you just raised the issue of that incivility, and I wonder, when you look back at some of that anger, real palpable anger we saw in August, people showing up to the president's town halls with guns, a certain really offensive saying on signs at a protest even this weekend in Washington, D.C., and of course Joe Wilson, a congressman from South Carolina, screaming at the president, screaming out at him, "You lie," in a State of the Union. Do you see race here as a part of that? Do you believe the fact that Barack Obama is a black man is part of what we're seeing with this anger out there?
Well, let me say, first of all, our country, the American people, turned a page in our history with the election of Barack Obama. This was a remarkable moment in our history. And now we're writing a new chapter, and we don't want to go back. We have to move forward. And I think that we have many, many issues that still have not been addressed in our country. And of course, race and racism has been swept under the rug in many, many respects. What's important is that we move forward and that we talk about these issues and that we do this in a civil manner.
I completely understand what you're saying, Congresswoman, but I want to get your reading on it. When you see all of this in its aggregate, do you believe it is partly because Barack Obama is a black man?
It's hard to say what's in the hearts and minds of individuals who promote these kinds of posters that we saw over the weekend. You know, hate speech can turn into hate crimes. And of course, we have to recognize the fact that there are many in our country who did not want to see an African American elected as president, but more did. And we elected President Obama, and we have to move on. But we have to have a public discourse, and we have to have a civil discourse about many of the issues around race and the unfinished business of America. And we're moving forward, but I think that we have to bring the country together in a healthy way to engage in this dialogue.
Congresswoman, on health care, we know that the Finance Committee and the so-called Gang of Six is working to find a bill that they can find bipartisan support around. We presume that's not going to include a robust public option. Are you watching what's going on in the Finance Committee? Do you care at all? Do you and your House colleagues care at all what's being produced there? Or is the House kind of set in what's going to be voted on the floor?
We care a lot about what goes on in the Senate, but I have to say, as a member of the House, I believe we have to have the strongest bill to move out of the House, which includes a robust public option, because that's the essence of this public health, of this healthcare reform policy. We have to bring the costs down for those who have insurance, and we have to engage in, or at least have a policy that allows insurance companies to become competitive. You won't have that if we don't have a public option, and so the House has got to pass the strongest possible bill that we can pass. But let me just say, we in the House, members of the Congressional Black Caucus, the Tri-Caucus, the Progressive Caucus, we're not sitting by the sidelines. We're working each and every day to make sure that we have a bill that brings the most amount of votes so that we can pass a strong bill off of the House floor.
It's not just the public option, though, that is in the House bill. It's also, according to the Congressional Budget Office, who has looked at the price of the bill, it comes with it a $239 billion deficit in the first 10 years of the bill. You heard the president Wednesday night. He's not going to sign anything that adds one dime to the deficit. So are you going to pass a bill out of the House that is not deficit neutral, according to the CBO?
The president is not going to sign a bill that, as he said, increases the deficit at all. What you have to recognize, and what the public needs to recognize, is that we cannot afford not to do this. When you look at the costs of not doing it, now we have 47 million uninsured. In a few years, we'll have 60 million uninsured if we don't do this. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. When you look at the fact that the Bush administration left us with a $2.5 trillion deficit, come on, we've got to pay for health care, and we can pay for it by the cost savings in the Medicare, Medicaid programs, which the president outlined. We're going to protect and secure Medicare for our seniors and move forward.
Congresswoman Barbara Lee, Democrat of California, chairwoman of the Congressional Black Caucus, thank you very much for being here today. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
We're going to take a quick break. More Top Line with Kevin Madden in just a moment.